WrestleMania 19 for Nintendo GameCube is probably the craziest wrestling experience I've ever had. This game was another one of those gems from my childhood, and my cousin used to own it and I'd come over and play it all the time. The exhibition wrestling itself was a great experience, but I didn't get to play the revenge mode myself until recently. So, with all the fancy newfangled WWE 2K games out, and even AEW Fight Forever out, how does WrestleMania 19 hold up 20 years later? By far, the most memorable thing about WrestleMania 19 was the story mode. The story mode in this game is known as the Revenge mode, and it's also known as absolutely crazy. The pitch meeting for it has to have gone something like this. Well, Mr. McMahon, what were you thinking for this year's career mode? You know, we could do a really interesting story involving one of the wrestlers.
Shut up! We're gonna do a mode that involves any wrestler you choose.
Okay, so far I love it.
And that wrestler is gonna go around to so many different locations, and they are going to murder construction workers and other various WWE employees.
Mr. McMahon, are you insane?
You're fired!
That's right, there's no career mode or Road to WrestleMania mode, which would make sense, by the way, since this game is literally called WrestleMania 19. But I'd argue in some ways, Revenge mode is even better than those. The story of Revenge mode is basically a wrestler of your choosing, in this case I chose The Rock, gets fired and rudely tossed out by Vince McMahon, and so to get revenge, Stephanie McMahon sends you out to various locations to beat up WWE employees, complete missions, and ruin WrestleMania 19. Regardless of the premise of the story, the gameplay itself is actually really fun. The ability to fight in spots like construction sites, a harbor, a mall, a parking lot, and others it's really refreshing, and it immediately sets itself apart from so many other wrestling games. It would be nice to get even more spots to fight in, but it's not too long of a mode, so I honestly don't mind that too much. Plus, the missions themselves are usually completely out of pocket. Multiple times you have to kill all the workers or make them bleed or destroy property using the workers' bodies. There's a couple more than that, but those are definitely the most memorable ones. Not to mention, the environment for the most part is destructible, and there are so many different types of weapons lying around that you or the WWE employees can use to their advantage. The game can get really challenging as you can get cornered by multiple workers at once and get completely stomped out. Every once in a while, an actual WWE wrestler will come by and stop you, or a custom boss made specifically for the game. When you think of a WWE wrestler, who do you think Vince McMahon would send? Goldberg, Scott Steiner, Kurt Angle, any of the big names? Nope, I got to fight Tajiri. I think it's randomized since I would also get to fight people once in a while like HBK, Big Show, and eventually Goldberg like I mentioned. But for every main event talent I'd come across, I'd end up with a complete jobber, and it just didn't make any sense. Wouldn't Vince send his best fighters to defend his workers and his property? Also, why would they make the boss fighters fake characters? This is a great opportunity to make them unlockable legends once they get defeated. I don't know if legends in wrestling games was a popular thing back then, but so many legendary faces could have been used here. I'm not too sure why, but there's only a handful of WWE employee models. It definitely gets less creative when you have to fight the same construction worker, security guard, or other employee a bunch of times. Not to mention, it seemed like all these employees only had 2 or 3 different movesets in between them. If every employee is a different person, then they should at least have the look and fight of a different person. It would definitely make the mode a lot more interesting and provide a lot more of a challenge, since with everyone's moves being pretty much the same, I can time blocks way too easy. By far the most annoying thing about Revenge mode is the fact that the controls weren't switched up at all with the Revenge mode in mind. These controls work pretty well for an actual wrestling, in a ring, but it doesn't work running around in the open at all. First of all, you can't change direction while running. Once you run around, you have to stop running and then run again to get to another direction. You can't just run and then change direction while running. You have to actually stop, then do it again. It gets really annoying. It makes certain part of the mode, like crossing the street with heavy oncoming traffic, really, really annoying and absolute hell. Secondly, the target system just needs to be thrown in the trash and reworked. It's so annoying to be surrounded by WWE employees and you can't properly target the one next to you because the game makes you go through all of them before you can get to the one that you want. Instead of making the targeting system go in order of whoever came first, why not have the ability to be able to point to the person that they want or auto-target the person close to them? If you do manage to target the correct person and they're behind you, your wrestler can't turn around and hit them with a move. You get stuck doing this awkward stuff. Lastly, why the hell is there a platforming in a wrestling game? I wouldn't even mind if it was done well, but anyone that's played this part of the game knows how absolutely terrible the swinging is. You can't just time the swing and grab the next chain either. Before your wrestler jumps, he does this weird swinging animation that completely throws off the timing. I just had one last mission left before beating the mode, and it was so frustratingly difficult. I just raged and called it a day. Just because of that swinging too. If these things were fixed, this mode would be way more fun than it is now. Even despite the nonsensical jank, the mode is actually pretty entertaining, and it's not too long, so I definitely recommend picking it up and trying it if you want a unique wrestling experience that you for sure will not get from modern wrestling games. The exhibition gameplay in this game is amazing. It feels close to like the perfect balance of simulation and arcade style, with big moves hitting hard, and there being such a big variety of weapons, but on the flip side, the wrestling isn't so crazy that you wouldn't see it on TV at the time. In my experience, I was able to have both shorter and longer matches depending on what I was feeling at the moment, and that was definitely a great feeling to have. One thing that I enjoyed was the way that the finishers work in this game. If you press A and B together, you then activate what I like to call finisher mode. And then you have a certain amount of time where you can hit as many finishers as you possibly can, and you just keep doing it until the time runs out. I grew up playing the Day of Reckoning series every day, so it was a very nice throwback for me. But that's definitely something that people may not like depending on their preferences. Another thing you may or may not like is the hit system. If someone is doing a move and you're in the area, chances are you're gonna take damage as well. I think it's cool and more realistic since that most likely would happen in real life, but I think I can definitely see it getting annoying for lots of people. Wrestlers will also have multiple finishers, which is good or bad. For example, when I was using The Rock, his front finisher is the rock bottom, and his back finisher is just this random clothesline. I would much rather The Rock could just turn his opponent around and rock bottom him, since the clothesline seemed really underwhelming. If you managed to hit a finisher in this game, the cinematic replay that you got was an absolute treat. Speaking of cinematics, when someone bleeds, the entire action stops and the camera just zooms in on the bloody face of the person while they collapse on their knees, which I honestly thought was a nice touch, just to emphasize the person's pain. The roster is solid with faces like The Rock, Stone Cold, Scott Steiner, Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, The Undertaker, and more. This era of wrestling was one of my favorites, with it being one of the last years we got to see so many legends in the ring before a lot of them left, as well as what were at the time fresh new faces like John Cena, Randy Orton, Batista, and more. The roster reflects that time period and those memories I have of that time period very well. It would have been nice to get some legends in the game as unlockables like Mankind or Bret Hart, or really anyone who's in the company that we have great memories of. There's also so many different match types to choose from, but there's one big match type missing in the form of the Elimination Chamber. For some reason, this isn't in any of the GameCube games, but even with that match missing, what we have here is pretty expansive and pretty special. There's also revenge stages to choose from. Basically, once you go through the stages in revenge mode, you can basically unlock them and use them in the exhibition mode. But my one problem is that you can't just have regular matches on them. They're basically mini games or side activities. It's kind of unfortunate you can't just have regular matches in places like the mall, and you're forced to compete with each other in like weird activities that you saw in the story mode instead. Overall, I was able to just pick up this game and have fun in an exhibition match years later, which is the goal. The customization is actually really nice, and I didn't use it too much in my recent playthrough. I do remember being able to create all the legends that I wished were in the game back in the day. That was crazy, so many unique creations, and I could just do so much with it. Lastly, I loved the shop feature. It takes me back to a simpler time before microtransactions, where I could just have fun with the story mode, and along the way make good money to buy whatever I wanted. WrestleMania 19 is honestly one of the most underrated wrestling games out there, and in my opinion, the first good game to come out on the GameCube. As a GameCube kid, I was bummed that I never got to play Here Comes the Pain growing up, but looking back on it, I'm glad that I was fortunate enough to be able to pick up and play this game and the Day of Reckoning games. If you have the chance to pick up this game and play it, I definitely recommend trying it out, as I'm confident if this game came out today with modern mechanics, modern upscaling, and maybe some adjustments to the controls, it would be a smash hit. So, how do you feel about WrestleMania 19? Do you like it? Do you hate it? If you haven't played it before, do you think it's worth trying out? Let me know in the comments below. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to an idiot rant. Please consider subscribing to support the channel. Also, if you have time, I usually live stream on weekdays around 8:30 p.m. Pacific time and weekends whenever I wake up and pull myself together. The schedule can sometimes change based on if I'm working on a video like this one, as it does take some time to put together. Also, consider these videos if you like my work, and thank you for your time. Plot Armor Games, out.